lab modules, and then we have incorporated a bunch of our own materials as well. And then this year, with the help of Paula Chesson and her sister who teaches at the University of Mississippi, I was fortunate enough to work with her, and this is some of my student-created work that Pat just spoke to you about. These are the historical pieces that the students actually took a day, the works of some scientists, like, for example, this is Werner von Braun, and looked at the astronomer to figure out, did the astronomer just say, oh, I want to be an astronomer? Or did something in the history surrounding the astronomer's life have an impact in the works that they did? And the kids really said, wow, it was the time period. World War II had something to do with the work that he did. This student did Kepler, and there was a bunch of different astronomers, and they all did the work. This happens to be a script, so you're welcome to look at those as well. And the last unit that we got was Geology and Earth History, which was a unit that we had a small portion on rocks and minerals, so it got expanded to more Earth history unit. So we talk about the plate tectonics and the shifts in the Earth rock cycle and the time periods in Earth, and how we can tell by fossils and the stages in the Earth's layering how something in Asia and something in the United States and something in Mexico could all actually have been laid down at the same time period, and we can use fossils to be able to tell that that all aged at the same time. Oh my gosh, that could actually happen. We use Dynamic Earth as a resource, and we also have a kit very similar to this FOSS one called Earth History, which are all lab-based and very exciting for the kids, and they have a lot of fun using clay and making rocks and rubbing sand together and collecting sand from different places that they go and bringing it back to school and figuring out what kind of, oh, this is beach sand, this is sand from a river, etc. So it's really fun for them. So those are the 3 units that we do in 7th grade.
And actually our kneecap test this year, the first true implementation, the inquiry piece was on plate tectonics. So Andy and I and the other administrators had 450 lab stations to set up, and the kids actually had sand and had to move their pieces to assimilate the
Plate tectonic
results, and then document their data and all of that. And they did real well, so we know the 7th grade teachers are doing their jobs. We hope anyways, Mark, right? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Grade 8 had the least amount of changes. So we have already taught a lot of what we got added for a new curriculum, so I'll just go through what we teach. We start off the year with our lab safety, which we need in order to have the kids do the chemistry labs. They need to know how to use all the safety equipment in our classrooms. And then we go straight into our chemistry unit. Some new benchmarks we had was relationship about matter, and we talk a lot about different types of matter, classifying matter. We go into elements, and at the end of our unit, the kids actually create a model of an atom, and they have to research what it's used in, different products, and then they have to figure out the atomic number of protons, neutrons, and they actually have to put them, how they would actually appear on an atom at the end of the unit. In meteorology, we start talking about the atmosphere and how it affects all the weather that we experience here. The students studied the different layers of the atmosphere, and then they had to create board games, and they had to travel through the atmosphere and make it out into outer space, and they had to have all questions to exit the different layers, so that way we spent a day going around and playing everybody's games, and the kids were like, wow, I really know all this information now. I'm like, no, really, that's why we do this. So they had a lot of fun getting to make their games and then play them. They wanted to play them for days, but we spent one day playing their games and learning about the layers of the atmosphere. We then go through and we do a lot of going outside and taking measurements outside with all the different instruments. We spent a week, and then we come back and we look at the data and we calculate the average temperature for the week. Towards the middle of the week, the students were able to predict what was going to happen at the end of the week because they were noticing the pressure was dropping, and they're like, oh, it's supposed to rain, and that's why, because the pressure's dropping. So it's really nice for them to be able to relate what they're learning in school to what's actually happening outside. Recently, we just did a project on storms. They learn about different storms that we experience around the country, and it's helpful now, well, with all the tornadoes going on, and the students are studying how they form and what kind of destruction they caused. And they actually just did skits on lab safety in the classroom, storm safety, which were actually pretty funny. Too bad they weren't here. And then they had to create either brochures or comic strips on a storm. So these are just some examples if you'd like to look at different storms that students did. One student did floods, and then a student made a comic strip all about tsunamis. And then our last unit is our ocean studies, which we go on our floating lab trip every year. And we just went a couple weeks ago. We had beautiful weather all week long. And the students on the trip, they relate everything they've learned all year long. There's 10 different lab stations that they go throughout. They start, the first couple lab stations have to do with a lot of our chemistry units. So they're checking the salinity of the water, how much carbon dioxide is in the water, pH levels, and they record all their data on the sheet. We're going to spend the next couple weeks of the school year going through all their data and seeing how it relates to what's going on in the ocean. The students also on the trip, their favorite part was getting to hold all of the animals that we got in the otter trawl. In one day, we got over 500 sand dollars. So the students really love the trip, and it ties in everything that we learned about weather and chemistry and ocean studies at the end of the year.
You want to do this part?
These are just some new benchmarks that we have.
Okay, and that's it. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask one. Were these rolled out to all the teams this year?
Yes.
Well, I have a daughter in the 6th grade. I'm just trying to understand how come I didn't hear about the cell thing. It seems right up her alley. I'll have to ask her.
I'm sure that you did it.
The applications were different this year. We're working towards moving towards it. In my classroom, they got the 9 different choices. In different classrooms, they got different things. I can't speak specifically. I don't know who her teacher is, but all of the same content is covered. But depending on the teacher, the application can change.
I just would have expected to have heard about the dragon.
Oh.
Ron, anything?
Did you see an increase of enthusiasm for science? I mean, that's really the bottom line on it is, did you